Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. So we actually have two wide releases last weekend. I said one in the previous video, and those are The Invisible Man is the latest horror movie by Blumhouse Production or Blumhouse Production, depending on how you pronounce it, right? The horror, low budget horror, production house, right? And then the animation My Hero Academia Heroes Rising. That one actually I left it out in my preview in the previous podcast, and this one is actually opening wide, and let's see how those movies did at the box office. Alright, so let's jump right in. So the top movie of last weekend is The Invisible Man. Surprisingly, right, this is a movie that I said would probably open somewhere in the 15 million range or so, because I saw the potential in this one. The budget for this movie is only 7 million, and when the Thursday preview numbers came in, it was like 1.65 million in Thursday night previews. They say that the movie was tracking somewhere in the mid to high 20 million. It has a potential to open to maybe 30 million plus. It got close, right? So The Invisible Man pulled in 29 million, and these are estimates, by the way. The real numbers will come in later on today. So 29 million open for The Invisible Man on a budget of 7 million. So like I said, another successful horror movie for Jason Blum and Blumhouse Production. The movie stars Elizabeth Moss as a woman whose ex was tormenting her, and supposedly he died, and he turns out that he became invisible and continue his torment of her, and that is the movie. Surprisingly, the movie is very well reviewed. I was expecting this movie to be somewhere in the somewhere between 20 to 40% on the tomato meter, but this one got 90% on the tomato meter, which is actually very good for a horror movie, and B+ cinema score. So yeah, this is actually gonna help this movie. The reviews coupled with the horror movie, and people were comparing this movie to like Get Out. It could be this year's Get Out, a movie that was low budget, but then it made I think over 300 million at the worldwide box office or something like that. It was huge. All right, so that is The Invisible Man. I expect the drop off to be I don't know, it could be somewhere in the low 50s at the second weekend. This is a horror movie after all, but then it'll probably stabilize in the third weekend, and then it'll depending on how well received this movie is, right? I mean, it is well received the first weekend, but then again, like, can it expand beyond that, beyond the horror movie audience? The 29 million said yes, but then again, can it capture more? Alright, number 2 is Sonic the Hedgehog. It actually did surprisingly well, this movie, right? I say, because of the disastrous first trailer, it would open to about 15 to 20 million, but then it blew my projections out of the water. 58 million open for Sonic the Hedgehog. Well reviewed as well. Comparatively, right? 63%. I thought it would be lower. So yeah, the budget is around 85 to 95 million, depending on where you're looking. And in its third weekend, it dropped only about 39% to pull in 16 million. Domestic gross so far is 128 million, and overseas it pulled in an additional 137 million for a worldwide total of 265 million. And these numbers are suppressed, by the way, because of the coronavirus in China, and China is like either the first or second theatrical market in the world, and because of the situation there, they closed down the theaters, and that they're going to affect this movie somewhat. Yeah, I don't think the China numbers are there, so it probably hasn't opened in China yet, but depending on how the situation go, we might not see the China figure for a while. Alright, number 3 is the Harrison Ford CGI live action mix based on a Jack London novel, The Call of the Wild. In the second weekend, this movie dropped about 47% to pull in 13.2 million. Let's see, domestic gross is about 56 million, and overseas it pulled in about 33.4 million for a worldwide total about 79 million, nearly 80 million. Budget is 135 million, which is kind of high, and worldwide only pull in about 80 million, so it has some ways to go to break even, and this movie might not do that well overseas. It's only 33 so far. Again, like I said, these the second biggest theatrical market or the largest theatrical market, like I said, or the largest theatrical market is over in China, and they have closed down the theaters because of the scare, and I'm not sure if they would go back open it anytime soon. So yeah, I mean, at least for this year, maybe the Call of the Wild is probably not gonna do well for 20th Century Fox's bottom line. Alright, number 4 is the other new wide releases this weekend, and that is the animation My Hero Academia Heroes Arising. This is based on a manga and TV series. I didn't know how wide this movie was going to be released last weekend, so I didn't preview it. But here it is, right? Very well reviewed, surprisingly, 92% on the tomato meter. It opened to about 5.1 million. I expect this movie to drop off huge the second weekend because, fans probably, front load this movie. And then, it's going to drop off huge maybe in the high 50s to 60 million. I mean, high 50s to 60% range in the second weekend. Alright, number 4 is Bad Boys for Life 2. It pulled in 4.3 million in the 7th weekend. Drop off percentage about 26% from the previous weekend. And let's see what the domestic gross is for this movie. Domestic gross is 197 million so far. And overseas, they put in an additional 208 million for a worldwide total of 405 million. Budget for this movie is about 90 million, so it's doing very well at the box office. And obviously they're gonna make a sequel. Bad Boys 4, currently in pre-production. Alright, number 6 is Birds of Prey, which is the spin-off of the Suicide Squad movie. Centering on Margot Robbie's character, Harley Quinn. In its 4th weekend, it dropped about, roughly 40% to pull in 4.1 million. Domestic gross is about 78.8 million. Overseas, it pulled in an additional 110 million for a worldwide total of 188 million. Budget for this movie is about 85 million and 188 million worldwide, and still counting, so it's not that huge of a moneymaker for Warner Brothers, right? It kind of broke even theatrically, so I'm not sure if they're gonna make a sequel to Birds of Prey. I mean, this one was anticipated, talked about, right? Because it's a female cast, female director. They asked for one, and the audience just didn't turn out for this one. And maybe I said the reason why this one wasn't as successful is that they tended geared toward more the female audience instead of the male audience, where it's like full-on action, for example, right? So I guess that's why Birds of Prey didn't do so well. I mean, it was well reviewed, 78% on the tomato meter, B+ cinema score. So there was good buzz on it. The trailer looks fun, right? But I guess for some reason, maybe the guys, the teenage boys just didn't turn out for this one. Alright, number 7 is IMpractical Jokers, the movie, which is based on a TV show about 4 jokers who play, pranks on each other and people. And this is their big screen adaptation of that TV show. And in this one, these 4 guys are competing for 3 tickets for a Paula Abdul party. So that is the movie. They compete, do some competition to, I guess, prank people and see, I guess, who did it better. And the one who get left out, stay home from the party. So this movie opened to 2.6 million. It didn't make the top 10 last weekend, but in its second weekend, because of the depressed box office, it shot way up to the top 10. So in the second weekend, it added more theaters, by the way. That's why we see it shot up in the top 10. It pulled in 3.5 million, and domestic gross is about 6.6 million, and it didn't open overseas, so the domestic gross remains 6.6 million. It looks like this movie is gonna probably stay in the top 10 next week as well, due to expansion, unless it loses theaters. So look for this movie, IMpractical Jokers, the movie, probably in the top 10 next week as well. And but then again, I don't expect this movie to expand beyond fans of the TV show much, right? It is pretty much kind of like a movie, Jackass the movie, right? Except with 4 guys playing pranks on other people. So yeah, IMpractical Joker, it's probably gonna be number 10 next weekend. All right, number 8 is 1917, which is the Sam Mendes World War One movie. In its 10th weekend, it pulled in 2.7 million, drop off of about 37% from the previous weekend. And let's see, domestic gross is about 156 million. Overseas, it pulled in an additional 206 million for a worldwide total of 362 million. This movie did better than I expected. I wasn't expecting a World War One movie to perform well, but I guess some of the award wins, 1917 racked up, actually gave it some, good word of mouth. It, did a platform release, and it built, like I say, word of mouth from there. And then, and then I guess the advertisement for this movie is like it was shot with like a single take or something, and I guess that kind of sells the movie as well, right? So the budget for this movie is 90 million, so 362 million worldwide, did well at the box office. Okay, number 9 is the horror movie Brahms, The Boy 2, which is the sequel to a horror movie back in 2016 titled The Boy. It did really well at the box office on a $10 million budget, right? It grossed 74 million worldwide. And then here's the sequel, Brahms 2. I mean, it was supposed to be released last year, but for some reason they decided to put it out this year. This movie stars Katie Holmes in the lead role, and I guess she is the most recognizable actor in this movie. And poorly reviewed, 9% on the tomato meter, C- cinema score. It opened relatively okay, right? 5.9 million. I was expecting this movie to open somewhere in the 3 to 5 million range, and it opened, a little bit better than my high-end projection. Like I said, this movie is too generic, right? Creepy doll, creepy boy, creepy house. One of these movies, and with the notable exception that there is a name actress in this movie, and that is Katie Holmes. So that is Brahms, The Boy 2. I expect this movie to fall out of the top 10 come next weekend. All right, let's close out the top 10 with Fantasy Island. This is a horror take of the TV series. Again, another movie by Blumhouse production. In its third weekend, it dropped about 45% to pull in 2.3 million. Domestic gross, let's see, domestic gross is about 24 million. Overseas, it pulled in an additional 16.4 million for a worldwide total about 40.5 million. This movie is relatively cheap to make, about 7 million, and it already grows 40 million, and it's probably going to close out somewhere in the 45 to 50 million when it's all said and done. Alright, so that's it for the box office top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. We are going to have two new wide release, and then an expanding one. And the expanding one is Emma, which is based on a Jane Austen novel. And then the drama The Way Back, starring Ben Affleck, directed by Gavin OConnor. And then Onward, which is the latest Disney Pixar animation. All right, let's start off with Emma. Like I say, this movie was released last weekend, I believe. This one's getting its expansion. It's well reviewed, 85% on the tomato meter. Again, it's based on a Jane Austen novel, Emma, except this one has a period in the title, I guess, for the new generation, for millennials, I believe. I guess, Emma, period. So this movie stars Anna Taylor-Joy as the title character. She was in, the horror movie The Witch, which did really well at the box office. She is an up-and-comer. She's not that well known yet. But yeah, she's going places, and this role might not push Anna Taylor-Joy into the mainstream as of yet, but it's an intermediate step, right? This movie also stars Johnny Flynn and Bill Nighy, Mia Goth, Miranda Hart. Yeah, this is another Jane Austen, big screen adaptation. There's a Little Woman way back. Was that? No, that one was by Louisa May Alcott. This one is Jane Austen. Okay, so, well, the reason why they make these movies endlessly is because these titles are in the public domain, and anyone can make, movies based on these authors' books. So well reviewed. I misspoke. It was released back in, February 21st. So it has already been in theaters for 2 weeks already. This one's getting its expansion. And when it was first released, it has a pretty good per theater average, about 16, nearly 16K per theater average. And then it has a second expansion last weekend. It was in 5 theaters, and then it added nearly 90 plus theaters. And then for that, the per theater average is only around 3,000 to 4,000. So I don't expect this movie to gross that much more. Expect the per theater average to be around somewhere in the 3,000 to 4,000 range as well. So this weekend this movie might pull in somewhere around 3 to 5 million. All right, next up is The Way Back. This is a drama starring Ben Affleck as a former high school basketball star. He's grown up. He has father issues. He wants to impress his dad, but his dad didn't like him, so he turned to the bottle. He's offered a job to teach at his high school as kind of like a redemption for him, right? So this is a movie that we've seen probably a million times, right? Except this one stars Ben Affleck, right? He coaches the kids and they win, whatever, they become better. And they bonded, and he saved them and they saved him, the team. Like I said, movie we've seen 1,000 times, million times, endless numbers, right? This one's directed by Gavin OConnor, well-regarded director. He started out, with Tumbleweeds. He came into the scene, then did Warriors. Again, another well-reviewed movie. Then he kind of fell off the trail with Jane Got a Gun, which as a trouble production. It wasn't released in theaters, or when it was released in theaters, it was kind of like has no advertisement or something like that. It was way back when. So now, and then he kind of did a movie with Ben Affleck called The Accountant, which did really well. So Gavin OConnor, his credentials are good. But this is one of these smaller movies, like I said, done a million times, except this one with Ben Affleck and Gavin OConnor. I think, this movie is probably going to do well. It's an uplifting movie. It's probably going to open somewhere in the 10 to 15 million range this weekend. All right, now we have probably the biggest movie this weekend, and that is Onward. It is an animation from Pixar about two elf brothers on a journey to resurrect their deceased dad through magic or whatever, right? And they go on this trip. Features the voices of Tom Holland, Spider-Man, and then Chris Pratt, Guardians of the Galaxy Star-Lord, and then Julia Louis-Dreyfus and John Ratzenberger, the old mainstay of Pixar movies, right? And Octavia Spencer and Ali Wong, among other voices. They're doing the voices for this one. It's well reviewed right now, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm not sure how well received this movie is going to be, right? It is not. This movie tend to target a more I guess a male audience, with the two boys and their adventure, right? This is more like a trip with the father, who is just the lower half, the legs, the legs down. But it's still a Pixar movie. It's still a Disney movie. I think it's probably gonna do well at the box office, but it's probably not up to the level I'm feeling of the previous movies. So I could do more, but I'm feeling that this movie is probably gonna open somewhere in the 50 to 55 million range. Since this is not a sequel, it's an original IP, and it's the Pixar and Disney brand enough to carry this movie to a 50 million plus, maybe higher. Is it going to be, one of these, 80, 90 million or 100 million opening? I don't know. I'm not sure about this one with Onward. Like I said, it's not as, even though it has magic, it's not as magical as the other Disney / Pixar movies with this one, Onward. So I think it's more typical, So conservatively, again, 50 to 55 million for Onward. Like I said, this is a Disney and Pixar movie. I wouldn't be surprised if it opened higher than my low projections right there. But let's go with 50 to 55 million. Let's see if I'm right. All right, so that's it for this week's podcast. Tune in next time. Until then, take care. Bye bye.